The alarm screamed through Lieutenant Kyle Morrison's helmet 3 seconds before the first plasma bolt shattered the barrier beside his head. He dropped flat against the bridge's metal surface, feeling the heat wash over his back as more fire tore through the night. The colony of Ashara was burning behind him, families scrambling onto the last evacuation transports, and Bridge 7 was the only route the Krevath couldn't bypass. Command's final transmission had been clear and brutal. Hold for 9 hours, or 23,000 civilians die. Kyle had 200 rounds, 4 grenades, and a collapsing energy shield that flickered like a dying star. The Krevath were coming in waves across the canyon, their chitinous armor gleaming under the 3 moons, mandibles clicking in what passed for their war songs. He'd seen what they did to human colonies. No prisoners, no mercy. Just ash and silence. He fired 3 controlled bursts into the advancing line, dropping 2 warriors before rolling left as return fire vaporized his previous position. The bridge was 80 meters long, 15 wide, with waist-high barriers that wouldn't stop a determined child. But it was a choke point, and Kyle had learned in a dozen combat drops that choke points were where ordinary men became legends or corpses. The first wave hit hard. 15 Krevath charged in a wedge formation, their 4 legs eating up distance with terrifying speed. Kyle triggered his first grenade, watching it arc perfectly into their center. The explosion painted the bridge in purple blood, but 6 kept coming. He switched to full automatic, burning through 30 rounds in controlled sweeps. 4 more dropped. The last 2 reached him before he could reload. The first one's blade arm whistled toward his throat. Kyle ducked under it, ramming his rifle's stock into the creature's thorax joint. Chitin cracked. The alien shrieked, a sound like metal scraping bone, and Kyle put 3 rounds through its skull at point-blank range. The second warrior tackled him, 600 pounds of muscle and rage driving him into the barrier. His ribs screamed. He got his combat knife out just as mandibles snapped inches from his face, drove the blade up through the soft tissue under the thing's jaw, and twisted until it stopped moving. He shoved the corpse off and checked his ammo counter. 163 rounds left. 8 hours and 54 minutes to go. The Krevath fell back, regrouping in the darkness beyond the bridge. Kyle used the pause to reload and assess. Blood ran down his left arm where one of their blades had opened a 10-centimeter gash. His medical kit had clotting foam. He sprayed it into the wound, biting down against the pain, and wrapped it tight. In the distance, he could hear the evacuation ships powering up. The first transports would lift off in 20 minutes. They needed every second he could give them. His radio crackled. Bridge 7, this is evacuation control. Status? Still standing, Kyle said, surprised. His voice sounded steady. First wave repelled. They're regrouping. We're reading at least 400 hostiles in your sector, Lieutenant. Command says help is 9 hours out. Can you hold? Kyle looked at the bodies scattered across the bridge, then at the sea of glowing eyes gathering in the canyon below. 400. He had enough ammunition for maybe 50 kills if every shot counted. After that, it was grenades, knife, and fists. I'll hold, he said, and cut the transmission before they could hear the lie in his voice. The second wave came faster, smarter. They'd learned. 30 warriors rushed the bridge while others laid down, suppressing fire from the canyon walls. Kyle triggered his second grenade into the mass, creating a brief gap, then picked his shots with cold precision. Headshots only. Center mass wasted ammunition on their thick armor. He moved constantly, using the barriers for cover, firing from different positions so they couldn't lock onto him. His rifle grew hot in his hands. The barrel temperature warning flashed red. He dropped 7 before they reached melee range. This time there were too many. A blade caught his shoulder, another his thigh. He felt bones scrape and ignored it, fighting with the mechanical efficiency of a man who knew hesitation meant death. His knife found throats and eye clusters. His rifle became a club when ammunition ran dry in the magazine. He killed one Krevath by slamming its head repeatedly against the barrier until the chitin cracked and its brains leaked out. When the wave finally broke, Kyle collapsed behind cover and reloaded with shaking hands. 98 rounds left. 2 grenades. His body was a map of agony, each wound screaming for attention he couldn't give. The clotting foam had stopped the worst bleeding, but he was slower now, weaker. The next wave would be harder. 8 hours and 11 minutes to go. Time became fluid, measured in waves of violence and brief moments of terrible silence. The Krevath came again and again, testing him, probing for weakness. Kyle gave them none. He turned the bridge into a graveyard, stacking alien corpses to create better cover. He used their own dead as shields, as weapons, as psychological warfare. After the 5th wave, he mounted a Krevath head on a pike made from a broken rifle and planted it in the center of the bridge. Let him see what happened when they came for him. The 6th wave arrived with something new. A Krevath commander, taller than the others, wearing armor that shimmered with energy fields. It studied Kyle from the far end of the bridge, mandibles clicking in what might have been respect or contempt. Then it spoke, the translator in Kyle's helmet, rendering its chittering voice into flat, emotionless words. "You are alone, human. Your people flee. Why do you die for them?" Kyle checked his ammunition. 42 rounds. The evacuation update had come through 5 minutes ago. First transports away, 15,000 civilians safe. 8,000 still loading. Because someone has to, Kyle said, and fired. The commander moved like a liquid shadow, dodging his shots with impossible speed. It barked orders and 20 warriors charged. Kyle burned through his remaining grenades, creating a wall of fire and shrapnel, then fell back to pure rifle work. Every shot had to count now. He aimed for joints, for the gaps in armor, for the soft tissue around their eyes. Warriors fell, but more kept coming. The commander reached him while he was reloading. Its blade arm swept in a beautiful, terrible arc. Kyle threw himself backward, felt the blade pass a hair's width from his throat, and came up with his knife in a desperate counter. He caught the commander's secondary arm, severing it at the joint. Purple blood sprayed. The creature didn't even flinch. Its other blade punched through Kyle's side, grating against ribs, and tore free in a shower of red. Kyle screamed and stabbed upward, burying his knife in the commander's thorax. The Krevath staggered. Kyle twisted the blade and pulled it free, then drove it in again and again until the commander dropped. He fell with it, clutching his side, feeling blood pulse between his fingers. Too much blood. The wound was bad, maybe mortal. He crawled to the barrier and propped himself up, reloaded his rifle with fingers that barely responded. 18 rounds left. The evacuation update scrolled across his visor. 2nd wave of transports lifting off. 20,000 safe, 3,000 still loading. 5 hours and 47 minutes to go. The Krevath pulled back, leaving their commander's corpse in the center of the bridge. Kyle used the lull to foam every wound he could reach, pumping himself full of combat stims that made his heart race and his vision sharpen with chemical clarity. The stims would burn him out in a few hours, leave him a shaking wreck, but he didn't need a few hours. He just needed to last long enough. Dawn came cold and gray, painting the canyon in shades of blood and ash. Kyle had been fighting for 6 hours. His ammunition was gone, spent on the 3 waves that had tried to overrun him in the pre-dawn darkness. He'd held with his knife and a Krevath blade arm he'd torn from a corpse, fighting in a red haze of stims and pain. Bodies were piled so thick on the bridge now that the Krevath had to climb over their own dead to reach him. He sat with his back against a barrier, the stolen blade arm across his knees, and watched the Krevath mass for what would probably be the final assault. There had to be 200 of them now, packed into the canyon, waiting for the order to charge. They would overwhelm him through sheer numbers. He knew it, they knew it. But they also knew what it would cost them, and they hesitated. Kyle's radio crackled weakly. Bridge 7, evacuation is 80% complete. Fleet has entered the system. Hold for 2 more hours and you're getting out of there. 2 hours, Kyle laughed, tasted blood and spat it onto the bridge. His vision was starting to blur at the edges, the stims wearing off and shock settling in. He could feel his body shutting down piece by piece. 2 hours might as well be 2 years. Copy, he said, because there was nothing else to say. The Krevath charged, all of them. a living wave of chitin and hate that thundered across the bridge like an avalanche. Kyle pushed himself to his feet, swaying, and raised the blade arm. He would meet them standing. If he was going to die on this bridge, he would die on his feet, fighting, making them pay for every centimeter. The first warrior reached him and he swung, opening its throat. The second died with the blade through its skull. The third knocked him down and he came up stabbing, fighting from his knees when his legs wouldn't hold him. Blood filled his mouth. His left arm hung useless. A blade opened his back from shoulder to hip and he kept fighting, kept moving, because stopping meant dying and dying meant they won. He killed 7 more before something massive hit him from the side, breaking ribs, crushing him against the barrier. He tried to rise and couldn't. Tried to lift the blade arm and his fingers wouldn't respond. A Krevath loomed over him, mandibles wide, ready to deliver the killing strike. Then the sky screamed. Dropships tore through the clouds, human military craft that came in low and fast, their guns already blazing. Plasma fire raked the canyon, turning Krevath warriors into ash and vapor. The warrior above Kyle hesitated, looked up, and lost its head to a precision strike. Kyle lay on the bridge, barely breathing, barely conscious, and watched the cavalry arrive. But these weren't regular dropships. One was larger, heavier, painted in the royal colors of humanity's stellar throne. It landed on the bridge with a ground-shaking impact, and the ramp dropped to reveal armored figures that moved with deadly grace. At their center walked Queen Aria herself, 7 feet tall in her battle armor, plasma lance in hand, her dark face set in an expression of cold fury. She saw Kyle lying in a pool of his own blood, saw the mountain of alien corpses, saw what one human had done alone, and her eyes blazed with something terrible and beautiful. "Kill them all," she said simply. The royal guard swept forward like a tsunami of vengeance. They were the best humanity had, warriors chosen from 1 billion soldiers, and they fell on the remaining Krevath with absolute brutality. The queen moved among them, her lance punching through armor like paper, her movements precise and economical. She killed 12 Krevath in as many seconds, fighting her way to Kyle's side. She knelt beside him, her armored hand gentle as she lifted his head. "You held," she said, her voice carrying wonder and rage in equal measure. 9 hours. Alone, you magnificent fool." Kyle tried to speak, managed only a wheeze. Blood bubbled at his lips. The Queen's medical officer was already there. Scanners running over Kyle's broken body, face grave.
"He's got minutes, Your Majesty."
Maybe less. Massive internal bleeding, organ damage, shock. I can stabilize him if we move now. The Queen looked at the Krevath commander's corpse, at the carnage Kyle had created, at the bridge that had held because one man refused to break. She made a decision that would echo through human history. "He doesn't walk off this bridge," she said. "I carry him." She lifted Kyle as gently as if he were made of glass, cradled him against her armored chest, and strode toward the dropship. Her guard formed a protective ring, their weapons tracking for any threat. Behind them, the last Krevath were retreating, broken by the arrival of the fleet, by the sight of their warriors piled like cordwood on a bridge one human had held alone. Kyle drifted in and out of consciousness as the dropship lifted off. He caught fragments, the Queen's face above him, speaking words he couldn't quite hear. The medical bay. Bright lights and urgent voices. Surgery. Darkness. Dreams of the bridge. Of endless waves of enemies. Of fighting until his body gave out. He woke 3 days later in a medical suite he didn't recognize. Everything was white and clean and quiet. His body felt distant, wrapped in healing fields and regeneration tech. For a moment, he thought he was dead. Then he saw her. Queen Aria sat in a chair beside his bed, out of armor now, wearing simple clothes that couldn't hide the regal bearing that made her humanity's sovereign. She'd been reading something on a datapad. When his eyes opened, she set it aside and smiled. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said, "welcome back." Kyle's throat was dry. A glass of water appeared in the Queen's hand, offered with surprising gentleness. He drank, gathered his thoughts, and asked the only question that mattered. "Did they make it? The civilians?" "All 23,000, the Queen said. "Every single one. Because you held that bridge for 8 hours and 47 minutes against an army. Because you stood alone when any reasonable person would have run." Kyle nodded slowly, feeling something unknot in his chest. They'd made it. That was all that mattered. The Krevath Empire sued for peace yesterday, the Queen continued. Their leadership watched the footage from the bridge, saw what you did, saw what it cost them to face one human who refused to quit. They've decided they want no part of a species that produces soldiers like you. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. Lieutenant Morrison, I'm exercising my royal prerogative. I'm making you a royal guardian, the first in 3 generations. You'll serve at my side, you'll have resources and authority second only to mine, and you'll help me build a military that ensures no human ever has to stand alone like you did again. Kyle wanted to refuse. He was just a lieutenant, just a soldier who'd done his job. But the Queen's expression stopped him. This wasn't about him. This was about what his stand meant. About the message it sent to humanity's enemies and allies alike. I'll serve, he said quietly. The Queen stood, and in a gesture that shocked him, she saluted. A sovereign saluting a lieutenant. The protocol breach was enormous. The meaning was clear. No, she said, her voice carrying absolute conviction. We serve, all of us. The throne, the military, the citizens you saved. We serve the idea that when one of us stands in the dark, fighting the impossible fight, the rest of us move heaven and earth to reach them. You taught us that, Kyle Morrison. You stood on that bridge and showed humanity what we can be when we refuse to abandon each other. She dropped the salute and her expression shifted to something warmer. Rest now. Heal. When you're ready, we have work to do. Bridges to build instead of hold. A military to remake. A galaxy to show that humanity stands together. Always. Kyle closed his eyes, feeling exhaustion pull at him. Behind his eyelids, he saw the bridge again. Saw the endless waves of Krevath. Saw the impossible odds. But this time, he also saw the dropships arriving. Saw the Queen descending like an avenging angel. Saw humanity refusing to leave him behind. He'd held the bridge alone, but he hadn't died alone. And that made all the difference. Sleep took him gently, and for the first time in days he didn't dream of war. He dreamed of building, of the future Queen Aria promised, of a humanity that had learned the lesson his stand taught. Never abandon those who hold the line. Never leave anyone to fight alone. Always come for your own, no matter the cost. The bridge on Ashara was preserved as a monument. Kyle's rifle, empty and scorched, was placed in the Royal Museum under a simple plaque that read, 1 man, 9 hours, 23,000 lives. This is what humanity means. But Kyle himself wasn't interested in monuments or museums. When he healed, he stood beside the Queen and helped forge a new doctrine for human forces. Small unit tactics, rapid response. The ability to reach any human, anywhere, within hours, instead of days. They called it the Bridge Protocol, and it transformed human military thinking. The Krevath never attacked another human world. Neither did the dozen other species who'd thought humanity weak, scattered, easy prey. They'd learned what Kyle taught on that bridge. Humanity didn't measure strength in numbers or technology. They measured it in what one person could do when standing between civilians and death, in the absolute certainty that if you stood alone, your people would tear the stars apart to reach you. Kyle Morrison never spoke about the bridge. He didn't need to. Every human child learned the story. Every soldier trained under protocols his stand inspired. Every civilian knew that if darkness came, someone would stand in the breach, and humanity would come for them. That was the promise. That was the oath. That was what it meant to be human in a hostile galaxy. Stand together. Fight together. Never leave anyone behind. The bridge had taught them. Kyle had shown them. And humanity finally understood.